Yo, what up, Street Dogs? There, Kim. All right, the thought. What is really holding you back in life, and what can you do about it? So, to me, this is very interesting because, I think what I love most about America and American culture and ideology is we could essentially craft our own future, we could craft our own destiny, and the only thing holding us back is us. So if you think about like the entrepreneurial spirit of JayZ, he's probably the ultimate like American success story, right? So like he kind of came from rags and then he became one of the most notable individuals. He went from like projects to billionaire. It's like it's a good story, right? So if you think about it more empirically, the thought that comes to my mind is, could have JayZ have become a JayZ had he not been, born into poverty and stuff like that? And I would actually say the answer is no. So this is my thought. America is all about the extremes. So, contrarian to the Europeans and Canadians and, the Swedish and stuff, and also the British, the difference between America and the rest of the world is America believes in extremes. So this is the philosophical thought. In America, you could have extreme amounts of inequality in terms of wealth, but you have a few of the really great individuals like a Steve Jobs or a Elon Musk and so forth. And so typically, I was talking to one of my friends and he said that America does two things really good. The first thing is we do universities really good. Like there's a reason why everyone's come to university in America. And also what we do really good is, Hollywood entertainment and so forth. And so why is it that all the Hollywood actors and also like, celebrities and notable peoples, why they all come from America? And I think my theory is America disdains the boring and the mediocre. America prizes and loves the lure, the crazy, the extremes. So even if you think about People magazine, how does People magazine work? People magazine works in the spirit that the unusual is good and the boring is bad. So America is anti-boring for the most part. So I think so I think the American entrepreneurial spirit, it's almost like not possible if like injustice, inequality, I think is almost like what creates the great American. So for example, if JayZ grew up to a nice middle class family, highly doubt he would have became a JayZ. Is that when you come from poverty, like I did, you really do hustle because you got no other options, you got nobody you could depend on. The only person you could depend on is yourself. And so even if I think about my entrepreneurial journey, I only became entrepreneur even at a young age, building computers and selling them on eBay, is because I actually literally knew my mom had no money, and because she had no money, I couldn't rely or depend on her. So it's just like me versus the world, or it's just like I'm the only option. Now, rather than being discouraging, this was the ultimate encouraging thing, because I knew that anything I wanted in life, I had to hustle for it. And so this is in praise of being a hustler. Because certainly, I don't know nobody who's a hustler who came from super riches or poverty, from super riches or middle class. It's kind of like, you gotta hustle when you got no one else to depend on. So even when I wanted, anything I wanted, and I needed money or wanted money, the goal was for me to rely and depend on myself. So, and this is actually why I think in America it's kind of interesting because we don't really have a social net, and maybe that's what, so I think what actually happens as a social experiment in America is that we get like 99% failures and we get 1% insanely extraordinary individuals, and I think that's the cruelty of America, but it's also the beauty of America, is that unusual circumstances make for unusually great humans and individuals. So even, for example, I think the reason why Kanye West came to become Kanye West is a combination of, racism in America, especially against African Americans, and also the fact that his mom was actually a college professor. He grew up in Chicago, where there's so much murder and injustice. And so, I mean, it just kind of comes down to more of a sociological, philosophical notion, is what do we want out of society, and what are the necessary conditions which allows for this, type of human spirit to come into being. So I think most of Europe wants, and when I say mediocre, I don't mean to say in a disparaging way, but mediocre means middle. So do we want a lot of happy middle class individuals like, kind of a Singapore or like a Sweden? Or do we want a society with more dynamic range, more diversity, with maybe more failures and a few extreme, really, really extreme outliers? And I think that's what America's all about, right? And so for me personally, I actually do prefer a society with much more unique or unusual individuals. I don't like boring. And so for me, as a creator or as an artist, your only cardinal sin is to be boring. Or the only cardinal sin is to do as others say you should do rather than listen to your own voice. Now, people's like, oh, Americans are so self-centered and egotistical. Yeah, like it's true. But, why is it that everyone's watching American movies and not, European movies and stuff like that? There certainly must be something to the fact that there's something about the American spirit which breeds interestingness. So I mean, certainly everyone has a different philosophy in terms of life and different types of sociology. And, I do think that even who you are, cannot really be blamed upon. Because you weren't, first of all, we didn't have the power to be born. We were just mercilessly thrust into this world without our permission. And who we essentially become is kind of like randomness and chaos and stuff like that. Like, had I not had my mentors, not my society, all the public education that I had, I wouldn't have become who I am today. And the weird thing about American society, in some ways, we kind of glorify the great individuals, but at the same time we want to kind of punish them. It's kind of like almost like a sacrificial lamb. It's I think Peter Thiel says it pretty good in terms of like his theories about humanity, the scapegoat mentality, that we Americans, we like to deify people, but we also like to scapegoat them, right? And we like to sacrifice them. So like even a Britney Spears or a Michael Jackson or an Elvis Presley, how cruel is it that they were once the darlings of the universe in America, and then they became some of the most vilified or considered the most ugly peoples, right? So once again, America's about inequality. My ongoing thesis is that inequality is actually necessary onto greatness. It seems cruel and unjust, but maybe that's what America's all about.